Okay, we should be going now. So we're in, we'll take a look here and let me get this. Okay, glad to see a few of us coming in. I have a little bar. I need to get that jewel out of the way so I can see what I got going on. All right, here we go. Now, we're here at week, let me do this first of all, make sure that everybody is muted in terms of their computers, whatever you got there. So I'm going to mute all. But I see Houston's here, Christian, good. No, I'm sure we'll have some others join. So we're running a little bit. Okay, now we're at week 6, which is the week of 10-2. And this is one of the more practical pieces of the entire book. And this deals with business intelligence. That's chapter 6. And they start with us at the beginning, that is at developing the data, the underlying data tools that help us develop a BI dashboard. So I want to talk for just a couple of minutes or so. I had messed up on my posting when I was taking this, and they couldn't decide if they were going to do Moodle or Canvas. And if you'd uploaded, one of these two earlier essays, that's fine, or the case follow-ups, that's fine. Or if you had not done it, you're certainly welcome to do Facebook privacy or the living threat of cyber warfare. Those are the two I intended to put in there. But if you haven't, now I've given 2 extra days on the assignment, so if you wanted to take care of it, but nobody will be penalized for uploading something they've done before, anything like that. Then you've got a hands-on project that's due on the 6th, and I want to look at it for a moment and talk about it. And if you look over on page 248, okay, and let me I want to mark myself here for just a sec. If you go over to page 248, okay, you're going to see that hands-on project. And so, and this is the building an online database for overseas business resources. And they tell you, okay, the bullet points listed at the top of page 248. Okay, now actually this is the one that starts with the inventory management. I apologize. It starts in 247. That's the bike shop at the bottom of 247, and then they give you 4 bullet points at the top of 248. And the first 3, I think, I asked you, I think, to do them in the database itself, and then in the fourth bullet point, I ask you to maybe upload a Word doc to give a description. Now, if you've had data admin with me or you're taking it with me right now, this is going to sound like a very familiar refrain, because at the heart of a business intelligence system of any type or a dashboard is the underlying data. And so I want to pop back over here for a minute and talk about the BISS database that I've got loaded there. And you can download, I'm going to download it. Okay, and we're going to talk about it for just a second, and so about what we're looking at. And it's published, so I'm going to download it. Well, there we go. Don't try to view it because you won't get a good view of it. And open it up now. If you're taking 4403 data admin course, or you have, you'll understand now how this kind of fits, and why one of the texts I included with that course is a text on business intelligence. I want to talk about this for just a little bit, because chapter 4 takes us some more in-depth referencing. Here's the bottom line. Our ability to collect data and pour it into databases of all sorts is the basis for us to extract that data and put it into what we call a dashboard. And the dashboard is really nothing more than a visual display of data, but a display of those data in a way that's intuitive as opposed to just a set of tables. Now, the products table, I want to look at it for a second. We'll talk about it, and we can open it up, okay? And what we have here essentially is what I would call a fact table. And the reason being is, let me pop these out here for a minute. We have a mixture of stuff here. We have a product category, okay, or type of product. We have the product name. We have the purchase cost. We have the selling price. We have the supplier name, the supplier number in here. And then we have the quantity on hand. We have the remainder left. And I'll edge that out. Now, when I call it a fact table, here's the reason why. If you look at some of these things, they're more like variables or dimensions or characteristics. Product category, okay? Product name, okay? Then you get some data that are amenable to some type of mathematical manipulation. Purchase cost, I could get the average out of that column. Selling price, same story there. Or I could get a net from taking the selling price from the purchase cost. I've got a supplier number. I have a product number. Those are both what we would call those would be primary keys, and or what would we call auto numbers that help us link up products with suppliers. And then we have quantity on hand, and we have reorder levels. So we could get an average of that. Those are numbers. So anytime you see a mixture of numbers, okay, in a table, and you see, or if you open up a product at work one of these days, you may see some visual. You may see some icons that look like tables, and then some that look like measures, or that will often be the term people use. So this is a facts table. It's a fact table because it has a list of facts. I have the product number, I have the supplier number, I have a purchase cost and selling price, and the only thing I don't have here would be a transaction number or transaction date. Then if I had a transaction date, I would have a true fact table, because fact tables track transactions. And a transaction can be contacts those people, the exchange of money, any of those kinds of things. So the product table, this product table is pretty close to a fact table. And if I had to do some heavy lifting, and this is, I know, only 24 cases, but if I had to do some heavy lifting and say it's 1,000 of them, or 5, or even 100, I'd throw them over into, I'd export them into Excel, and then I would turn them into a pivot table. And we're going to do that for just a second here, okay? Let's take, let's say the changes. No, and I'm going to take the product table and I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to put export. And I'm going to export it to Excel, okay? And I'm going to put it down on my desktop, okay? And this will be the product table. I'll click OK. And then away we go. And then I'm going to diminish here and see if I can find that product Excel file. It should be an XLS file. And let's see if I can find it. I'm going to take this jewel, move it over here, and diminish that down. And let's see if I can find the product. You should have the product table on your desktop. And look, here it is. I think that maybe it threw it out there as a CSV or what. We'll see. Now here we are. Now I'm in a position, if I want, to go ahead and I can take this array of A1 all the way down to I-24, and I can go ahead and insert it into a pivot table. Okay, and then with pivot tables, it's a lot more intuitive for me to play with these variables, to mix and match them, than it is to try and run queries. Anytime you start doing some heavy lifting mathematically with a query, you ought to just take it and put it into a spreadsheet application. Now, as I've said many times, there are products that are out there that are intended to allow you to do that, but we're not there yet. But for my money, right now, for most people, you're going to be looking at pivot tables. Probably going to be what you'd be working with. Although if you start to get tens of thousands of cases, that becomes a whole different issue. But you can see them. We can go ahead and look at them, and we're missing the date, but otherwise we'd have everything we need there. So that would be one that I would recommend that you maybe want to take a look at. Now let's go back to the BISS database. Okay, and now I have a suppliers table. Let's open that up. Okay, now this one is indeed a dimension table. In fact, it's almost like a lookup table, or we could use it like one. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I'll show you here in just a sec. Okay. Now, this is all what we would call categorical data. The zip codes are a type of zip code, a particular place, and it's the same thing here. Now, if I want, I'm going to close this off for just a second, because I would call this a dimension table. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the product table. Let's open it up and go to design view. Okay, now I've got the product. I've got product name there, and if I wanted to, I could go ahead and use a lookup. Okay, to get that to pull those data up if I chose to do it. So what are you talking about? Well, let's look at product category for just a second. Okay, and I can click down here and I can get a combo box, and we've done this in 1123 where I get a row source and then I get a lookup. Not a big deal, but the main thing is on that exercise, page 248. Here's what's embedded in that word problem. The 5 most expensive bikes. Okay, the bicycle, and put them in descending order from most expensive to least expensive. Again, now this is like a word problem, but this is very typical of what you'll get at work. You'll have somebody who will ask you verbally, and you'd probably be smart to write it down or ask them to send you an email or whatever to say, what is it that you're after or that you want? Those are going to be the situations where you're going to have to collect that query, because what they're really asking you to do is a query. And then you have those situations where you're just running regular reports, and a lot of that will be just automated stuff that you'll see. And then the second bullet, it's products quantity enhanced. You'll have to do some queries and run queries on them. Now, if you're taking 4403, if you want to try your hand at writing some SQL, that's fine. If not, you could use the create and then the design view, okay, and load things in that way. Now, when you're working in doing a query in any database, there are 3 levels, okay, and there's the data sheet level, and I'm just going to pull. I'm going to select. I'm going to show the tables, and I'm going to add the product table, and I'm going to get the product ID, and I'm going to get the purchase cost and the selling price, okay, and then I'm going to create an extension over here. And I'll go into the thing, and I'll go, let's see, I'm going to call this net. And when I create an extension, I put in a full colon. And then I'll put in a bracket, and this will be selling price. Okay? You could see why I was telling you how tedious this is going to be to do even something simple like this. When you can just throw them in a spreadsheet. We're going to take this selling price minus purchase cost. You got it spelled. You have to spell it correctly and put it in there. Now I'm going to take that expression, okay, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to put it here into this area. Now there are other products that you would do this, but it'll be a lot more intuitive and look a lot slicker. But this is just basically, when I talk about the GUI, the graphic user interface mode, that's where almost everybody works. Now, we're going to run that query and see what we get. And there we have. Now, you say, well, what do you mean by the data sheet view? Well, I can click on here, and I can come up now to the data sheet view. Well, that's where I'm at. Now, I can't emphasize enough, and the book does a very good job of this, and I talk about this in data admin also. When we run a query, we don't change the data in the table. If we're allowed to do that or update it, that's fine. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're going in and we're extracting some data, and what gets saved is the SQL, not the data, because we already know where to go get the data, what we want, etc. And so this, this is really the foundation of your dashboard, because this is where you get the data. Now, the book talks a lot about developing a database management system, and we mess with databases in 1123. We do everything with databases you could possibly do in 4403, and so it kind of rears its ugly head here. But the whole point is that in order to have an effective dashboard, I've got to have good data, and I've got to have those data organized in a way that makes sense, and I can do that. Makes sense means, first of all, I've got the right variables or dimensions. Okay, now let's look at the supplier. Do I have all the right stuff on the supplier? Yeah, I do. I have their name, their ID, where they're at. I might have sales history, things of that nature. I'd have to run well, they give me a supplier table. I get the products. So if I had sales transactions that occur, I'd throw that in. That is the basis. And so when I run a query, now the products that are out there will let you, as I've said before, they'll let you run a query basically, and then use a spreadsheet. Pivot table is a good example of that. Okay. Below that, obviously, are the databases. But the thing that makes business intelligence the most effective is the dashboard, the concept of a dashboard. And I want to show you that. And so I'm going to click on a new tab, and I'm just going to put in, I'm just going to do a search for business intelligence. Okay. And then I'm going to come down here, and here we get over at what is, and we'll take a look at some of the what ifs. There's Wikipedia. Here's an article from CIO. Okay, and they'll give us some definitions. Okay, and some of the tools are out there that we can use. Okay. Now the key thing with this and I'm going to go back to my search, and I'm going to look for images. Okay, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, you can see from what I've got a wild collection of visualizations. And so I use it, the dashboard is literally like a dashboard of your car or whatever, so you can see the status of everything. And here's one, and they give you kind of a schematic. Here's one that shows you percentages and where you're at in terms of distribution of data. Okay, here's another that shows you, types of visuals where you're at, and I'll scroll down here and I will find you a more classic kind of dashboard, and I would say probably this is like one, a little bit like one. Okay, and they're showing you some data that you'd get from your tablet. Now they show you some of the input that's fed. Here are others. The whole idea of business intelligence is if I've got the right data about the right things, then I want to display it visually in a dashboard environment, meaning I open up my machine, whatever it is, and I see the things called data about the things called the KPI, which are the key performance indicators. Okay, so the dashboard is going to work at the level of management you're at, and the kinds of stuff that you feed into it. And the textbook does a pretty good job of talking about that. The key is putting it into a way that we can see. Now I'm going to click on oracles, and maybe they'll give us a picture. Okay, of something. Here's one. Okay, and you can see. Okay, and that let us take a look at where are we doing. And here's a data sheet. Here's another one, and so you can see it. The whole idea is just to show you what it looks like and where your data and how you're performing in a way that's that's very intuitive. Now, I wanted to show you also over here. Domo, here's a platform, and let's see if they'll show us an example of it. Okay. These are some of the people that do business with them. And let's see if they will show us a display of some type. No, they want to sell it to us, so we're going to have to take a look at it. Let's look here and analytics for a second, okay? And when we move from just describing how things are, okay, and we move into saying, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, or if I continue on the track I'm on, here's what I'll get. We move into predictive analytics. Now, those of you who have taken management science with me or will take it, we do a lot using the optimization tool because that's one of the ways that we say, okay, along a continuum of possible outcomes, what do things look like? And so that's an important piece for you to see. Now, I have some stuff from chapter 6. I want to share that with you, and I think I'm going to be able to do that. And I don't want to have to do a slideshow. I'm just going to open up each one. I hope. Or is that going to open for me or not? Probably not. I uploaded this for you guys, and so I have to go over and see if I can find this chapter 6. But if you have your book with you, which I hope you do, because I was going to just show you the figures from chapter 6, and you could listen and you could reference to them. And I'm just going to walk you through. Over on 219, that figure 6.1, they show you the data hierarchy. Okay, and let me see if I can find this jewel right here, because I know I had it. I had chapter 6 out here where I could just mess with it and open it up on this machine. Oh, I don't want to mess with the PowerPoint. Well, over on page 219, they show you the data hierarchy, and they show you a bit, a byte, a field, a record, a file, and then the database, which is 2 or more files. Typically, we would say a table, okay? And then they walk you through traditional database file processing over figure 6.2. And then they talk about the multiple views we get from using a DBMS, database management system. That's on page 222. And then figure 6.4 really does a good job of showing you what we're talking about in terms of what's underneath the dashboard itself. Here is a relational database, a set of tables. It's called supplier, okay? And there's a primary key, learned about those. And then you have a part table that has a primary key, and then the foreign key from the supplier is linked in there. And that's what we call the database management system, and we pull those together. Then they show you 3 operations of a DBMS over on page 225 in figure 6.5. 6.6 should be no big deal. That's an access view and access query view on 6.8. Okay, and then they talk about data normalization, which is not that big of a deal. But in chapter 6, a key piece of chapter 6 is the discussion there about data warehouses and data marts. Okay, now you say, what do you mean by a data warehouse versus a data mart? Well, let me show you. Okay, for all intents and purposes, okay, this BISS thing is a database. All right, but it's incomplete because it doesn't have any queries. It doesn't have any forms that I can see. I'll put all access, maybe it's, all I have are a couple of tables. So what you would really call this is a data mart, because this is where I come and grab some stuff I want and go. A warehouse is when I have 2 or more databases pulled together. Now, a warehouse may have queries that are run already, or may allow you to do what we call what-if queries. And what did we sell in October? And then the ability, if you want, to export out to a spreadsheet, and then do some heavy lifting in terms of working with the data, doing mathematical computations. Now, the the key thing to understand is this. This whole idea is based upon and is really driven by you as a company understanding what you're doing. Now, all of this, and if you'll take a look, if you have your book, you ought to take a look at Figure 612, because it walks you through the whole, what we call a contemporary infrastructure. You say, what do you mean? Modern or contemporary business intelligence structures collect data real time. They just don't take data that are fed into it, take real-time data. That might be transactions as they occur at an ATM swipe. That might be transactions as they occur on a phone. That might be locational data. Who knows? But because they're real-time, okay, and because we're perfecting ways to take that, what we call what we call big data and unstructured data, meaning it doesn't easily fit into tables and rows. We can do a lot of heavy lifting and do it in real time. Okay, and that's and then you'll see there on 235 they talk about casual users versus power users, and those will be dependent upon how a company is organized. Usually the casual user is going to be somebody at a lower management level, and then the power users will be the people at top. But literally, they walk you through. Now, if you look over on page 236, you'll see something I've talked a whole lot about, and that is what I call the analytical cube. Okay, that is the multidimensional data model. Now, what you notice there is you've got these products and regions. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 products. I've got 1, 2, 3 regions. I have 12 different queries I could run. How many nuts did I sell in the East? How many bolts? Blah, blah. Then you see actual performance data, okay, versus projected. And that's where business intelligence takes us to a step where we do what we call predictive analytics. And that would be I try to make some predictions based upon current and past performance. Now, the best example I can give you of that is if you remember back when we were in, if you took 1123 with me, and we did that, we did the company that was making the chips or electronic components, and we tracked all of their, we tracked their, how many they were manufacturing, and then the percent defective. And then we computed a linear regression, okay? And then we said, okay, what does it look like if we keep doing it? Now we did it. We also did a line graph, and then we used the linear regression tool in Excel to say, okay, if I make X number this year, the percent of defects will be what based upon that trend line. That's what we try to do with predictive analytics, and that's why they're so useful. Now, that's baby stuff, because what's out there now is we can get such a complete picture of the parties in a transaction, the elements of a transaction, that we can say, okay, this person's likely to buy this type of product in 3 months, 4 months, or whatever, or seasonal kinds of data. And so that's a piece there that we get with the high-speed computing, okay, cloud computing, and these databases that are more robust than they've ever been before. Now, unsupervised data have to be cleaned up and put into some way that we can deal with them. It may be data from barcodes. Like I said, it could be locational data. Who knows? But they're real time, okay? And that's why that dashboard, because when you're driving your car, for example, and you look at the dashboard, you're not looking at what the gas, you're not looking at, when it shows you how much gas is left, it says how much is left right now, not how much you had yesterday, okay? And so you'll want to take a look at some of these, and I want to pop over here and see a report, okay? I'm trying to find something that will give us a nice graphic on it. And let's click on the images. Do that again. Okay. What would be a good one that would show us? Here we go. I was talking about. Now this is their quadrant for intelligence and analytics. But you can see you've got people, you've got different products charted here on the basis of completeness of vision. Now, if any of you are taking business policy with me, okay, and you're working in the simulation, in the CAP sim, you see that thing called the perceptual field, the perceptual table. And that showing that northwest to southeast drift of those products, there's people, they're selling sensors, and where I'm looking at performance versus size. And I want higher performance and smaller chips or sensors, excuse me. Now here's one, okay, and this talks about the benefits of them, but they show you, this also shows you some of the more typical kinds of visualizations or iconic looks that you'll get. And I'm going to get down here and show you something that really looks about as good as you're going to see when you go to work and look at something. And I gotta wait for this. I'll pop out here. I'm just going to go BI dashboards. Okay. Here we go. This is now this right here that I'm showing you is a classic dashboard. Okay. You say, what do you mean? All right, I'm going to click on the image. Okay. And here I'm looking at, and let me see if I can size this up a little bit more for us. I'll do that. Okay, this is opportunity count 47, what is that supposed to mean? And then opportunity cost, okay, and or these courses, but they're showing you revenue, okay, courses, and it's a single page typically that will give you all kinds of data, and usually you can pop these out. Now I'm going to try to see if I can get this scoped up a little bit more so you can kind of see a little bit better what we're talking about here. And you may want to do that as well. Okay? And you can see, for example, bar charts. They've got, you know, the typical stuff, a pie chart. You'll see line graphs. You'll see a horizontal bar chart. That's pretty typical of the stuff you get. The whole idea is this, that you look on your desktop, whatever that, or your screen, and you see some type of iconic image that depicts to you how things are going. And then you can, of course, you could do the analytical view. But the whole idea is to show you a dashboard so you don't look through a bunch of tables, okay? And you don't have to try to make sense of a bunch of tables. Now, this is one, maybe they'll show us something that on a demo that looks nice. Or now they're going to try to sell us something, so I'll pop back over here. Maybe this will show us this. No, they want to. Oh, okay. This is not too bad. Now here is something, and I have no idea what this is. A customer retention dashboard, but each of the pieces of this dashboard give us trend data, okay, revenue data, and you're typically going to get trend data, revenue data, and some type of comparative data, maybe plan versus actual, maybe by geographic location. It just depends, okay? But you've got to have two things going on for that to happen. One, you got to have a database management system, and number two, for it to be really useful for you, you need real-time data so you can do the analytics. And that's what this chapter talks about, is the business intelligence. Now, the hard part of this, okay, is not the technology. The technology is pretty easy to put together. It's what are my key performance indicators? And I can tell you over the years when I've worked with different people, different organizations, they have two questions that they really struggle with. One, who are our competitors? Who are they? And number two, what business are we really in? And the larger a company becomes, typically the more difficult that the more difficult it becomes for that company to make that type, to say this is what we do. Okay, if you were to go across over here to the local barbecue stand, they'll tell you our mission is what? For customers to enjoy barbecue, have a nice experience. Okay, but you might say, on the other hand, your mission is to what? Promote a small business enterprise, etc. And that's where things get kind of hairy. And if I were to ask them across the street, who are your main competitors? They're going to rattle off some names, but that may or may not be relevant. So that's that piece of looking at key performance indicators. And key performance indicators ought to also include not only company data, but data from the industry as well. And again, here are some images for DV dashboards, and you can see them. We'll pop this one out. Okay, we kind of took a look at it. Here's another. And this gives us a mapping feature. And it just depends on if you probably don't want to develop these yourselves. You probably want to have someone develop them. But the key thing is, what information should people have and be able to access at what level? And that's why our authors in this text talked a lot about this notion of information, of the information, who owns information, the ownership of the data, etc. Because at one level, people need to see only certain things. At another level, they need to see everything. Here's one of these. It relies more on maps. You can see there are all kinds of them here. Now, here's more of a classic one that shows us a classic performance dashboard. And what they've done is they have, they have a kind of a thermal half pie is what I would call it. And then you can see they have a couple of graphs and line graphs and bar charts. Okay, so that you can see, and one's probably actual versus planned, and so you can see and compare what's going on. Now, what makes these, again, such a powerful and important tool is our ability to capture data so fast, okay, and transform it so that we can really be more reactive, more proactive than reactive, especially if I'm a sales organization and I'm trying to push complementary goods, or I'm in a pretty turbulent environment trying to make sense of what's going on around me. And you can see here's another. There's no secret to this. There are many, many books out there about how to develop these and what they should be. Now, this is not too bad because it's a little more educational in terms of what it shows you, okay? And pop off this. I want to show you this one again. You'll see here that you've got these reports from data set A, B, and C, okay? A, B, and C came from a data warehouse, okay? And A may be its own database, B might be its own database, the same with C. This is the whole idea is I have a warehouse, I collect stuff, I pull it out, I process it, and then I throw it into a dashboard. I use visualization to show it so that a human being can quickly look at it and make sense, not just table after table of data. And you can see here, and this is important for a very simple reason. Human beings respond to images, okay, especially iconic kinds of images. Now, you can look here and you can tell me, and I can tell you without even looking at the data, that down in this second performance indicator, there's somebody that's just way off the charts. I have an anomaly there. Same thing on the bottom, okay? And then I can come over here at this kind of iconic, and this gives me bar charts, some type of lines, okay? This stuff, again, is all wonderful if you've done the thought work to get the right data. And that's why we put you through these BISS courses, so you come to understand this, and it gets reinforced. Plus, you get comfortable with the technology, and you come to understand the difference between regular reporting and what-if types of reporting. But the main thing is you start to understand what gets counted gets done. That's an old saying. but it's the truth. And if what gets done is reflected in your KPIs, then you've got then you're in good shape. If it doesn't, then you are just kind of floundering out there collecting data that may or may not be of any use to you. Here's one, and look, they can be really good or really bad. Here's one that's just awful. It's so crowded, you can't really tell anything from what's going on here. And again, you can go out and there are courses on how to develop these. There are books. I have in the data admin course, I have them take it. There's what I think is a really good text on business intelligence and making sure you get the right data. Here's another, okay? And this is supposedly real-time data, okay, fed in terms of a plant's status and what's going on with costs and all that kinds of things. Yes, they have that, and that type of data and information is there, even in manufacturing facilities where you're running, be it retailers too. The thing is our ability to collect data real time and process it. That's what has really changed all of this, because that gives us the ability to be fairly nimble or to make the adjustments we want to make. Here's another, not too bad. Okay, some of this can be really squirrely looking stuff, and you want to be careful. Now, like this, for example, that bar chart over there, the multicolored bar chart, looks like a candy, but Lord, who knows what they're trying to tell you. Now, here's something. This is somebody who's done this about on a scale of 1 to 20, 1 to 100. This is about a 90. You say, what are you talking about? Well, we have fraudulent calls. Okay, the same number, same time, and we've charted that. All right. Okay, and we've got them by the minute, and we have them by time. Okay, and so you can see the spikes. Now, you say, well, why would you give this a 90 out of 100? For a very simple reason. If I have these all compressed, all right, like they are in these short intervals, they don't look as smoothed out as they probably are in reality. And that is one of the things that, that you have to be careful about. So if you have a chart like this, you might want to chop it up by the hour or 30 minutes. Or by the minute. You can see this is a 5-minute interval, okay? Oh, then they say a 15-minute, a 10-minute window, okay, and they got 5, so they've chopped it up, and you can see how sporadic it looks. I would want to see that in some different looks, and a good dashboard system would let me put that into a bar chart. I might even put it into a pie just to see what it looks like and manipulate those data a little bit. But the thing is, if these data are good, okay, I should be able then, given certain conditions, to try to predict fraudulent calls over time. Now, one of the things that we do in the management science course is we take a set of tweets that have been made about a company's product, and we strip them down, clean them up, and then we count them, and we devise a way to predict which is a tweet about the company or its product, or which is just a random kind of thing, okay? Just maybe spam. People that work with spam and trying to combat it do a lot of this type of work. So the textbook does a pretty good job. But over on page 240, when they talk about data quality, information policy, etc., that's important, because if you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it again. If you collect data, have a reason for collecting it, because it costs money to collect and costs money to store. Now, I'm going to go back here for just a second for this. I'm going to close this off, and let's go back to the bike database. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's open up the product table. Okay, now these data have been inputted one of 2 ways, one of 3 ways. An employee of ours sat down and inputted the data from written data or a phone call, something like that, or somebody swiped a card and that went into a sales into a customer relationship management system, and then pops back a table. Who knows, okay? But here's the thing that's important. We'll go to the design view. Now, I'm starting here with the ID, and we're in good state because this is an auto number, so it makes sure that it's unique. And here I have a product number, okay? Now, look at what I'm seeing here. If I click down in the field properties, is it required? No, that's insanity. That's asking for trouble, okay? I know because I've been there and done it. Now I realize this is an example from the textbook, but if you don't need it, why would you collect it? Okay, so I would probably make this required, and what that means is the record won't save if I don't have data in there. Is it indexed? No, that's not great, because if I don't have it indexed, I can't more efficiently use the resources of the computer. Let's go down here to a product category. Well, this time it's required. We allow 0 length? Yes. This creates a problem for us. You say, what are you talking about? A 0 length means there's nothing in that particular cell. So we have a problem called null versus a 0. This is a problem that starts here at this point where I've collected the data in a table, and it roosts it, and its ugly head raises up in the middle of a report that have in a meeting where I've got all these empty fields, and I don't know what happened. And I'm going, why have I got all these fields? Where's the data? It's because probably about on the front end of things, you didn't do the kind of enforcement, i.e. information policy, that you needed it. Okay, and it's an easy thing to say. Don't collect what you're not going to use. Okay, otherwise you're wasting your time. Same thing with here. Again, we have this is required. No, well then why collect it? That's the product name, and you can see what I'm talking about. Now, again, this is information policy, but it's at the most. Policy really starts at this level of minutia. And when you go to work and you're out there and you get a report that has all kinds of duplicate records or stuff missing from fields in the report, mark my words, if you go back and begin to talk to people, you're going to find out they don't collect all that data. Oh, we added the field a long time ago. Have we ever collected data? Oh, no, we really didn't feel that. That's just like, that's that. There's nothing that makes me crazier than that. And it will make you crazy when you're out there trying to build a report. I'll give you a really good example. I do a lot of work with churches trying to help them figure out, okay, what's the geospatial pattern of their growth and development of their congregation. You say, why is that important? Well, we know we have high predictive data that people, almost regardless of denomination or type of church, whatever, they will drive at most 18 minutes to a church, and then boom, it's over. It stops. It's about a 5 to 10 minute window where people will join or will come to a church if they're seekers or they're just interested. Now, if I'm seeing that circumference around that location of that church keeps shifting or moving in one direction, that's telling me something. But if every Sunday, and churches are volunteer organizations, I understand that. You have, Mr. Adams greet people, and then you had people fill out a visitor's card, but somebody forgot to get the zip code or forgot to get the address, you got a problem, okay? And it becomes even more crazy if you're working and I worked with a few people, had a situation where they have all these people who drop their kid off on Sunday morning and they scoot. Now, I know that some of you have probably seen me post on Facebook on Sunday morning that I'm at First Baptist Church Moore. I'm actually there. I'm not in the parking lot. I'm really there. Come in and you'll see me there with my wife and mother-in-law. But I've been accused of saying, yeah, you drive over there and then you probably go get a beer. It's not true. I'm there. So if you're going to collect the data, collect it. You say, well, this sounds like common sense. And I spent all this money for this textbook for common sense. Well, yeah, because business, it's easy to be stupid in business. You don't really have to work hard at it. If you want to be smart, that's where the work begins. And so that's the same kind of issue here. And we'll look at the reorder level. And is it required? No. Now, you tell me, if you're selling inventory and you're trying to use, for example, economic order quantity, and you don't know what the reorder data, if you don't require the reorder number or amount, what good is it? And unfortunately for you, you're going to go out and have workforce that the people who are inputting a lot these data, if it's hand inputted, and you don't have a form that protects you to make sure that everything's there, then you're going to have problems. And so the theory of Chapter 6 is a beautiful thing if you do your homework right at the very start. Now, they also talk about ensuring data quality, and then over on page 242, they talk about data quality audits and then data cleaning. Data cleaning is an interesting concept, and that's one of these things we talk about in terms of trying to take what we call big data and make them useful for us. So what are you talking about? Well, I'm going to go over to Amazon. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Okay, and you can follow me on Amazon if you wish. I don't care. We're on Safari together, so and if there are any lines, I will not protect you. You're on your own. And I'll go over here to Amazon, and I'm going to click on books. Okay, and it's gonna and it's gonna ask me. I'm gonna put MIS. What books are out there? Okay, here's MIS. All right, are there any reviews? And here are 4.9 stars. Okay, and what do I do with that? Well, okay, I've got to find some way to scrape those stars off to figure out, okay, this book versus all the other books, how do they do? Now, if I can go in and find a review, then I've got to try to scrape off, okay, any reviews that are in there, okay? And I might even be interested in trying to scrape off, okay, who bought this book who bought this book, or what was recommended along with this book, to get a sense of its positioning. Okay, this is just a very simple example, but we work with a lot of these what we call unstructured data. They're not easily put into a table, and so we have to do some cleaning of them and straighten them up. And part of that is back to this thing of the data cleaning, is working with null data or data that are zero. Now, if you look down here, you'll see at the very top here, okay, we've got a selling price, we got a purchase cost, all right? Now, this particular product may have to be updated. There's one of two ways it'll happen. I'll run an update query and change it, or I will have someone come into that uses a form and do it. But I want to make sure that the person who changes it knows for sure that there's an order for it. You say, what are you talking about? Let's go back and look at the design view for just a sec. And you'll see over here product number. Okay, now this is incomplete for a very simple reason. Whose product number? Is it a number that we assigned? Is this a number that was assigned by the vendor? Where did we get the number? And what happens when the vendor says product X5 blah, 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 blah is now product Y4, blah, blah, and this happens all the time, and you're going, okay, I've got to update this because or I can end up double counting orders and potentially double counting what I think are revenue. So again, there's a lot, just the detail stuff that has to happen for us to move all the way up here to this level where we've got the dashboard. But it all starts at that level. Now, just to help you get a sense of how fast this is all occurring, right now, every 2 years, we generate more data, okay, than was generated in human history. That should just make you go, whoa. Think of all of the products, of all the appliances, cars, tweets, phone numbers, all that stuff out there that people are generating. It's, I don't know how many millions of search there are every minute in Google, and all that stuff's floating out there. And can I get a hold of it and use it for my company, or can I clean it up and use it? And there will be some times where you'll get, if you deal, for example, with government data, you'll go back sometimes and you want to try to look at archival data, and they may be archived in a format that just doesn't even fit with what you would do today. Old software formats where you have to go and try and find some legacy software to load it and get the stuff out. I went through a course, actually it was a specialization program at Johns Hopkins, and they gave us housing data, and we had to go in and take housing data and clean it up. And this is like 50,000 cases of 37 different things that they were asked about. And the part of in the program, in the course, we were utilizing a programming called R, which is designed to do that. And R had a function in it called the melt function, where we could literally just say, okay, here's the data that we've got and it's in these columns, and I think it's this number of rows, and we just kind of fix it up for us, and you'll get the data. Then you have to cull through it and find out what it actually means, etc. So this is in some ways kind of running out from under us. Now, I'd have to say this, when I look at this course, this MIS course, okay, and you'll hear me say this probably more than you want to, social media platforms, in my mind, are a solution looking for a problem, okay? A dashboard is a solution to a problem if I've got the right KPI and I've been really thoughtful and stringent at the base level, and that is at the data collection level. And the more that you automate that process, okay, the better off you are, which is why, people want you to, insert your card or swipe it. They want you to buy off the cell phone, that type of thing, because they get all this information that wouldn't be gotten otherwise. Now, this chapter is incomplete in the sense that it does, and you should not expect it to go in and show you what's the best dashboard format for a particular type of data. Back in 1123, those who are taking it now, and if you've taken it with me recently, there's a text by Stephen Few, okay, called Show Me the Numbers. And he walks through how to present data and present it effectively. And if you have a dashboard, and I'll see those, they're just they're cool looking, but maybe they don't tell you the right stuff. You've got some real problems. So that's the thing about information technology, okay, and MIS. It all should be decision centric. In other words, something designed to help me make a decision, okay, and it all has to have good quality control from the get-go, or you're going to have problems. Now, the text uses some interesting terminology in here. Over on page 238, they talk about text mining, sentiment analysis, okay, and web mining. All right. Now, if you're kind of watching the news right now, that Facebook had, I don't know how many thousand fake accounts. The people in Russia went in, created about, I don't know, 7,000 accounts supposedly, and then these fake people would post stuff, okay, and usually be something incendiary, or would promote a lot of discussion, get people all hot and bothered about a particular topic. And the way that they did that was they went in, and to find out what to send you, these folks, they would scrape Facebook data, and they're the best hackers in the world. And then they find out who's the person who might have voted for Secretary Clinton, who's the person that might be willing to vote, who would probably vote for Trump. And then they'd send them the opposite message. They'd send something to Hillary Clinton saying, Black Lives Matter, people are all killers. and then they'd send something to Trump saying Black Lives Matter, people are heroes, and people would pop on that. They'd start commenting, and they'd post it, and they'd repost. And this is supposedly to ferment some kind of problems, okay, much less how they penetrate our voting infrastructure. A lot of people don't know this. The only thing that has saved us so far, which is an irony, is that our voting machines are still somewhere about 1985. So they're not hooked into anything. And all those people say, well, let's do electronic voting. I said, stop and think about this for a minute, because if I can infiltrate your record, the records, your voter records, which they did, and they did many, and did quite well, in fact. And then they withdrew because they really didn't want to create a problem. They just want to kind of disrupt things. But they leave a few hundred people who are running from precinct to precinct because their voting records are messed up. And so this thing of sentiment analysis, okay, is a way they could scrape that data and take a page, for example, a Facebook page, and convert it down and get text data from it and do the text mining. So there's a lot to be said here, but I can assure you that, you know, this one is, you know, an interesting case, and you'll be able to do some work. They have two tables here, and just to review, just to quickly review, okay, we'll go back here to the assignment. And this is the upload MIS hands-on. And I want you to add, this is on page two, really at the top. The 3 bullet points at the top of page 48. The background information on this is over on page 247. Okay. Now, this is a bike shop, and this is something I pulled from the MIS lab, so I pirated it. So forgive me. And they've built a relational database, and once they built it, they want to run a series of queries and then do some reports. So it goes through that pretty familiar cycle of, you know, run a query, then generate a report, and then write a brief description of how the database could be enhanced. Okay, and there are some ways that it could be enhanced, and I talked about some of them. First is just simply the data integrity. Okay, that is indeed right at the start is an issue with these. We did start a little bit early, and before we close off, I want to make sure that I don't have anyone out there who's, let me click on the syllabus part. Now, when I was loading this like a numbskull, I came down here and for the October, I repeated a couple of essays. Pardon me, a couple of cases to follow up, which is stupid. Now, if you did that, okay, I'm fine. If you care to, you can go back and do another follow-up. I don't know. And the two that I really wanted you to look at is there's no privacy, okay, with Facebook, and that talks about their privacy issues, or the threat of cyber warfare. This is the one that, to me, the one on cyber warfare that's very, very interesting, and I've kind of followed it for, I guess, close to 20 years now. I've been looking at that, and the earliest evidence we have of this isn't just somebody releasing a virus, but a concerted and what would appear to be a state actor or agent of a state actor engaged in cyber warfare was the Russian Federation dealing with what at that time was an independent Republic of Georgia. Yes, there's a Georgia in Russia, just like we have a Georgia. Ray Charles does not come from there. He comes from our Georgia. Okay, but they're Georgia, but it is the birthplace of Stalin. And to Russians, Georgia is important. Okay, it'd be like if if the people in Canada said, people in New Hampshire said, we'd rather join Canada. Well, there's probably a lot of us who go, you can have them. There are a lot of us who'd say, no, we want them here. We keep them here. And so here's what they did. This is the very first that we know of. They went into government websites and they defaced them. They would post pictures of the leaders of the people in the cabinet to be different members of the Nazi party, Joseph Goebbels, Hitler. They'd put they would deface the website, okay, which is fairly easy to do. But then, just to experiment, they shut down one of their phone grids for about 8 hours. Turned the phones off. Phones weren't working. When you can't communicate, you are in trouble. So that was the first time we saw, and of course the Russians said, oh, we didn't do that. We didn't do that. That was a 400-pound kid in the bedroom hacking away. Unfortunately, the thing is, these breadcrumbs, they always lead back, and they have changed and enhanced their approach all of the time, okay? And so I think it's a case worth looking at, because, you know, we know, and I think last week I showed you guys the little places you go learn about internet threats. A major concern to people is, what if they invade, you know, our power grid or something like that? The worst would be if they take our eyes away from us with our satellites and those tools that we have. So if things got bad, we know where to send the 7th Fleet. Well, all that being said, I'll be interested to see what you need to do to improve what you suggest in terms of improving that database. And just the simple kinds of questions. The second bullet point, its products, coin in his hand. So now, this would be these 4 bullet points would be a regular report. If I were to say predict what you think they'll sell, that becomes a different issue. And so then I've got to load on. Then I've got to look at if I have some sales data, and then I've got to do a little bit of predicting, maybe use a linear regression or whatever. Okay. Well, listen, folks, I appreciate you staying. We started, so we've gone just about the time, and gave you some food for thought. And again, I apologize about the snafu with this one, but I did give you a couple extra days if you want to look at it. And I'd say, for my money, probably the case that might be the most. Facebook is an interesting one too. I like the one on cyber warfare. Well, but let me say this tonight, if you get time, if you've got it around your house, go take a look at, if you have a paper copy, or you can go access your agreements with your cell phone provider and take a long, hard look, because they own your data and they can use their data and sell it and resell it. And that's an issue. And Facebook, you and I are really the product, okay? I've grown weary of Facebook. I'm tired of looking at recipes and what somebody's grandkids doing. And what I found out also is the people I didn't like in high school, I still don't like them. So Facebook's been kind of a hit and miss experience for me. I guess I'm probably more of a Twitter person, because that's where really things heat up. And I know all of you are doing naughty things with Instagram and all that. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just pray for you. Okay, that'll do it for today. Thank you so much, and I will see you online on Wednesday. Thanks a bunch.